Welcome, everyone. And in this first session today, we're going to be taking a look at network security in education. So for those of you that don't know, my name's Matt Pullen. I am the Senior Product Marketing Manager here for education at Jamf. And this is what we're going to be looking at through the rest of this half an hour or so. And we know that over the last few years, we've seen a much higher amount of threats and attacks directly targeting education. And we want to share some of those trends with you today that are attacking our industry, but also the solutions that we have in place that can help you just be safer around your cybersecurity. So we'll start with an overview of some of those threats that many institutions are facing, but also how Apple's native security layer can support and protect you. And then we're going to take a look at the strategy for modernizing and managing your devices in your institutions. How does Jamf support you to really make sure that your devices are fully secure and your students are safe? And we're going to finish today's presentation to give you an overview of some Jamf security and something really big happening in education to really support our friends out there in schools, colleges, and in higher ed as well. So let's start by taking a look at what the security challenges are that are facing education today. Well, if we take a look first at Apple's native security features, you probably aren't aware of some of these attacks because these features on the devices that you have will have this built directly into them. Starting with the hardware itself, the security built into the hardware, why you've bought those Apple devices in the first place. Using iOS, iPadOS, macOS, tvOS, or watchOS, they all have security capabilities baked right into the device itself. And then we extend that out to the operating system. Those operating systems have that unique capability of integrating with the Apple hardware. And that system security is designed to maximize all of the security of the operating systems on those Apple devices without compromising any usability. And that system security encompasses everything from the startup process, software updates, and the ongoing operation of that operating system, which is probably why it's so important to make sure that you have the most recent versions of Apple operating systems because they're the most secure. So automatic updates are probably a must in all institutions. And then if we think about that encryption and data protection, I'm sure you've all heard about Apple's privacy policies. They're really, really important to them as a company and to us at Jamf as well. And Apple devices have encryption features to safeguard user data and enable remote wipe in the cases of device theft or loss. And then there's app security itself. Apple provides layers of protection designed to ensure that those apps are free of known malware and that they haven't been tampered with. And other protections are also in place to help ensure that the access from apps to user data is carefully mediated. And then finally, the services security. Apple has built a robust set of services to help users get more from the utility and productivity out of their devices. These services include things that you're probably familiar with: Apple IDs, iCloud, sign in with Apple, Apple Pay, iMessage, FaceTime, and even Find My Device, making sure that we're really secure on those devices. But no matter what we do with a device and however many security layers are on it, Apple devices are still not 100% safe from attacks. And we've seen this a lot during the pandemic. We've seen a change in behaviors around how people use their devices. And devices are now moving beyond our school network as well, due to off-site working and usage. And although this is a potential transformation for how our students learn, it also brings with it some security implications for us to consider. Where those devices were protected on our in-school networks, they may be more vulnerable when they're outside of that. And these are just a few examples of attacks that are becoming more common and can have a huge impact on institutions. And the shift to a complete reliance on technology that we saw during COVID meant that these cyber attacks were happening in ever increasing numbers across more institutions, making them more vulnerable to using any systems. Furthermore, according to the National Cybersecurity Centre, in recent incidents affecting the education sector, ransomware has led to the loss of student coursework, school financial records, as well as any data related to COVID-19 testing. So this is something which we really need to start to consider and think carefully about how we protect our end users when they're utilizing the products. And here's just a few numbers and stories to share with you. If we look into some of these attacks, for example, the University of California in San Francisco paid $1.1 million to NetWalker hackers after they encrypted data within the School of Medicine servers. And some other findings from January 18 through to 2021. Just under 4,000 individual schools and colleges have potentially been attacked, impacting on over 3 million students. And schools and colleges combined have suffered an estimated 1,387 days of downtime due to ransomware attacks. And that estimates around to about 9,500 days spent just on recovery efforts, having a huge impact on the IT systems. And something even more startling, as high as $40 million in total being asked for ransom requests for that data. Now, that's a huge amount of numbers there and a huge amount of data. And there's things that we can do, obviously, to protect ourselves from this as it becomes an ever more increasing risk in schools. As we said earlier, hybrid learning has introduced new challenges as well as opportunities to schools. Remote and hybrid learning has presented challenges around users and their behaviors. We may be familiar with using our devices ourselves, our personal devices, but when we start using school-owned or institution-owned devices, it does bring in new issues that we have to be careful around. Take phishing attacks, for example. Once a user's been contacted and they've opened up a link which could have some malicious information in it, this then opens up their device to the wider network and issues going beyond that. Device protection, therefore, needs to be in place to help protect that user, as well as educating those users around their behaviors on the device. Then there's the apps themselves. Some apps downloaded could still contain some malware. And this is becoming especially an issue if the institution device allows users to download their own apps, because this is an excellent entry point for these attacks. And then finally, the networks these devices are on. At home, that network is not institutionally owned or maintained. And again, it could be a simple source of entry for some of these attacks. Now let's highlight in on that user behavior and how it can open the door to risk. These users are often not within the perimeters of a school building or campus, connected to locally owned infrastructure. They could be in coffee shops, for example, catching up on schoolwork, coursework, whatever it might be. When they're using this open Wi-Fi or mobile connection, their devices are open to these attacks. And there are two main attack types that we can look at here. First, there's an outside-in attack, and you're probably more familiar with this one. An attacker who doesn't belong to the institution is trying to infiltrate it to get information from any of your users. A phishing attack, for example, when you think it's a safe link in an email, but it's not. I'm sure we've all seen those emails from that rich benefactor who wants to give us lots of money, but others are more realistic, looking like they come from a more trusted source, some even pretending to be colleagues or even major companies that you already know that your school or institution utilizes. We see here that remote users were 26 times more likely to be phished than to encounter malware. And it really shows that no matter how good your devices and networks and applications are in terms of security, students and personnel are always going to be the weakest link. And the second is looking at the risks that users themselves introduce through their own usage. If we look at the threat brought in by apps, the shift to remote led to an increased reliance on applications. During the pandemic, as a result of people trying to cope with the new normal, institutions tended to relax restrictions on the app use. This then led to an introduction of a lot of application risk that went way beyond that malware. So how can we help that? How do we move away from this kind of negative aspect to what we can do to make a difference? How do we manage and secure our Apple devices and combat these challenges that we've just seen? Now, if we take a look at the products that will support Jamf School device management in the form of Jamf School or Jamf Pro, we can support your devices through updates we've highlighted as being important. Jamf Connect, which supports your Mac accounts and authentication, ensuring that users' identity is checked before accessing these devices. And Jamf Protect, which is your on-device threat protection. Now, these tools, these applications are really your last line of defense, because we can now go even further with that. And Jamf has recently extended its portfolio of products to support from a wider distance, developed further to include network security as well. And this is a layered on top of those endpoint tools that we mentioned a moment ago. So if Jamf Jamf School and Jamf Pro are our endpoint tools, we can now start to consider this additional layer of security. And this includes things such as Jamf Data Policy. Jamf Data Policy providing content filtering, allowing organizations to define which websites and apps can be accessed from company-owned mobile devices. Jamf Threat Defense, which protects those mobile endpoints from being compromised through mobile threat detection and zero-day phishing prevention with a first-class app for notification and remediation. And then finally, Jamf Private Access, which ensures that after a user authenticates into their device, any work connections are secured whilst enabling non-work applications to route directly to the internet, preserving end-user privacy and optimizing that infrastructure on your network. And this is layered as our network security. So we have our endpoint, and now we have that network security wrapped around it as well. Now, if that seems a little bit overly technical, let's look at this from kind of an everyday life perspective. Let's take a look at our houses. We have our houses and we can secure our houses in a few different ways. I'm sure we all have locks on our doors. We may have an alarm system set in place. We may have cameras in place to give us that extra peace of mind. And finally, I'm sure many of you have got that noisy pet that will let you know that somebody additional has come to your door and you might need to do something about it. And these are all great as that point of security, but they're equally the last point of security. These are in place because someone has actually got into your perimeter. They've actually made it to that end point. So let's look at your wider perimeter then. Around our houses, we tend to maybe have a fence or a wall. But as with anything, we need to be able to get in and out of it. So we have gaps in our walls. So how do we plug those gaps? Well, in the case of our fences, we tend to have gates that would allow us to go in and out. And like with anything, we need to think about how do we get in and out of those. Let's take a back gate, for example. You may have a padlock on that, and you've got the key that allows you to access that, and you've stored it in your house. You may also have a separate place for deliveries to drop off any parcels. I'm sure over the last couple of years, we've all had many parcels delivered to our houses as we've kind of got used to this new way of ordering things. And we might have a safe place for that to be left. Now, stick with me on this one. What if we also then had a security guard on our front gate? And that security guard is there to really make sure we check the identity of anybody trying to get in. And within this, that security guard can check for whether that person is a legitimate visitor, whether they should be allowed into our property, or whether or not they should send them away. But as with good security guards, they can also check whether or not people should be leaving the property. Let's think about that teenager who maybe wants to head out to a party late at night when they really should be revising for their coursework. They're in a great position to also stop that person from leaving. So let's look at this then back within the products that Jamf School and Jamf Pro offer us. Jamf Pro, Jamf School, Connect and Protect are those endpoints. And the fence around our property is our network. And again, we're going to have those gaps in that network to allow content to go in and out. And we can plug those with our security tools. Jamf data policy, for example, stops people going to those specific locations. In the case of this, it may be saying yes to go to Google, but no to go into things like Facebook. That could be a distraction to learners in the classroom. We also have threat defense, which tells us whether things look suspicious or unhealthy and can help us stop those malicious attacks. And then finally, we have our private access, which protects our online services like Office 365 or Google by having the right key in order to enter. And then finally, if we think about that house that we live in, maybe more as an apartment block, there's lots of different things within the house. And the great thing here is that our network solutions provide security, even if it's not just Apple devices. So if you've got a multi-device set of tools within your network, our network protection tools can help protect those as well. So let's take a look at a little bit more information about an exciting Jamf security offering, perfectly suited and aimed at our education market. Now, we know that student independence in learning is important. We want them to understand how to look for great sources of content, but at the same time, we want to keep them safe from things that they shouldn't have access to, like gambling and games, etc. Things that could easily be a distraction to their learning. Now, the importance of content filtering is that it supports that student independence whilst also protecting them from unsafe content. So taking this, we looked at previously, taking this idea, we looked at previously around the idea of the fence, and data policy and threat defense provide that. But we've now made an education solution that provides simplicity to this process. And that is Jamf Safe Internet. Now, Jamf Safe Internet is easy to deploy. It's designed specifically for our education customers. It protects against malware and phishing, and it integrates simply with Jamf School. Now, the internet should be there for students to learn confidently, growing and exploring wherever their curiosity might take them. And now students spend nearly twice as much time online than ever before as a result of the pandemic. And this means a growing need for digital safety to eliminate these cyber attacks and prevent our students from accessing unsafe content. Now, we've designed a brand new console from the ground up with workflows specifically for the education user. It's every bit as powerful as the commercial product we mentioned before, but seamlessly integrates with Jamf School, making deployment and an ongoing syncing simple and intuitive, all from the platform that you're already comfortable with. So when you're using Jamf School, we have you covered. Now, Jamf Safe Internet strips away all of those complex things and simplifies it to what education needs, with privacy at the heart of the product. Now, you can start with predefined rule sets, looking at safety, blocking, and bandwidth restrictions. You can get more specific and choose from a wide set of block categories, thinking about that gaming and gambling. And you can also restrict high bandwidth or non-productive sites. Think Netflix or Facebook that have the video feeds in them that take up a lot of bandwidth on your network. Also, potentially not being as productive as other sites might be. But you can get even more granular. You can add scope for custom rules for all of your users. You can even customize your block screens, helping educate the user about why their access is being blocked. Now, this protection is powered by Jamf's content filtering and network threat protection engines, delivered through seamless integration with our flagship education device management solution, Jamf School. And we want students to be safe whilst they're learning. whilst also helping them understand that their privacy is important, helping them stay away from harmful locations and educating them on the correct and safe use of the internet, whilst also giving them the privacy they deserve to be learners that are curious. Protection over inspection. And as this is cloud-based, it means that that protection goes wherever the student is as well, whether they're in school or at home doing their additional learning. Now, JamSafe Internet recently launched. You can find out more information on our website or through speaking with channel partners as well. Of course, we're nothing without our customers, and that is proven with our Jamf Nation community. This online forum has over 100,000 Apple IT-focused individuals that learn from each other, discuss best practices, and have access to a wealth of resources and third-party tools. So please do head over there and start to jump into these conversations to find more about how others are using these products and how they can support you. We also provide a marketplace with tools and resources to help make that Jamf platform even more useful to our customers. Thank you so much for listening in today. We are absolutely thrilled to be offering this security to our customers. It's something new to us here, but something that we think is going to have a huge amount of potential for everybody.